Hello and welcome to Two Trees Gaming. We've hit 3,000 subscribers and that means it's time for a mega battle. It's going to be 8,000 points and it'll be one of the biggest battles in Middle-earth strategy battle game YouTube history. We're so excited and we can't wait to share it with you, but before we do, we've got to build a board. I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who has subscribed. Please don't take the channel for granted if you are watching and enjoying the content. It's an awful lot of time and work and money, so please click subscribe. And now is the perfect time to sign up for the Patreon. All of the money from that just goes back into leveling up the channel and making the content even better. You'll also get double dice if you sign up before the 1st of October. And these are Baron of Dice dice. They're really good quality. And please go check out the Baron of Dice using the discount code that's on screen now to get you a discount. They've got dice for all the factions of the Middle-earth strategy battle game, as well as Warhammer, 40k, Blood Bowl, everything you'd ever need. But for now, let's get on with building a board for an 8,000 point battle.
It's going to be a 6x4 board. Anything else becomes difficult to store and fit in shot. I also want to make sure that we have a clear 4x4 section to play regular battles on when we're done with the 5 armies. So, I found this aerial shot of the battlefield and decided this would be the best spot to go for. There'll be a clear 4x4 section here. There's a slope down from where Dane enters to the main battlefield with a large open space in the middle. The board will stop just before the Gate of Erebor, but we'll have mini cliffs like these and broken columns flanking a road that leads off toward Mirkwood, Dale and Ravenhill. That leaves 2x4 to fit in quite a lot of other stuff. In this picture you can just see Ravenhill and the glacier. They're a must, as that's where the big duel between Azog and Thorin takes place. There's the bridge to Ravenhill here, which is next to the hill where Bolg's army, the Eagles and Beorn arrive. And then there's the bridge here which goes to Dale. This is part of the plan at the moment, but don't get too attached to that.
I'm not an expert by any means and we're going to make mistakes, but hopefully you're going to enjoy seeing the whole process as we kind of learn how to do this together. I've previously been paralysed just overthinking things, so I just want to get started. I've got a lot to fit in that 2x4 section with the river and Ravenhill and the gate, and the middle battlefield I need to make sure that's not too plain, as it's got to work as a regular board as well, but it's enough to get started on. Let's go.
I ordered some foam from the underfloor heating store here in the UK. They have 2 types of foam that I use. XPS, which is cheaper and less dense, and I'm using that for the baseboard, and XB Pro, which is more dense and more expensive.
I'm really happy with the foam itself. It's very good quality and does exactly what I need, and it's delivered quickly, but it does feel pricey. So if anybody in the UK knows of a better supplier, stick it in the comments and it'll help everybody out.
I'm building the board in 3 2x4 sections, as I'm hoping to avoid a massive line down the centre of my shot, and it means it'll split into 2 different 4x4 boards if we want it to.
I've seen people put braces onto the bottom of their board so that the glue doesn't curl it. I've never experienced that. This is about the 4th board I've built. So I'm not going to do it now. Hopefully I'm not going to be paying for that later.
Some famous last words there. I'm sure I won't regret that. The foam itself is just shy of 2x4, so I start by faffing around cutting slithers of different pieces of foam to make a full 2x4 covering.
I need to finish off this little edge that's annoyingly hanging over, so rather than measure it, I'm just going to make sure I've got a right angle corner here, and I'm going to flip the board upside down and draw around what's left. I'll sand the edges or wrap tape around them or something at the end, so I'm not worried if it's not completely flat. So I'll have cliff around here, slope here, and then up toward the back there's going to be a cliff coming out, going up here, so that it separates Dane from where the Gundabad arrive, because Gundabad needs to be able to come on here, Dane needs to be able to come on here, and then big battlefield in the middle.
I start the actual build with mountains around the area where Dane and the Gundabad arrive.
So it's not an exact science, I'm just eyeballing it, but I'm making the most of the fact I've got a right angle here, so I'm going to try and draw that on top of this, and then do the same, rotate and do the same again, and that will give us a nice high cliff that I can then chop into and make look more natural.
I make them jut out quite a long way into the board. I want to separate the Iron Hills and the Gundabad as much as I can at the start of the game, but I will make this central hill climbable later. I'm thinking this is a pretty good start to having them work as standard gaming boards too. I really don't want it to be too open. Then I start the slope that the Iron Hills march down.
So I've got this 30mm foam. I'm going to put it onto the board, put the mountains on where they'll be, and then try and cut round the shape of that. So I'm trying to leave a bit of space to put an army at the top here if you wanted to play it from the point where the dwarves and elves clash. So I'm not going to go much further back than this, but I do need to make this slope a bit more gradual. It's okay if there's a little bit of cliffage on it, but we don't want loads. I'm going to smooth it out a bit more, and then what I'm going to do is dig down here so that it's like Danes coming down from the top and the orcs are coming up from the bottom. I think that'll be quite a cool synergy. And then I just need to put some undulations in and make these look like cliffs, and this third of the board will be done.
To get the cliffs looking a little bit more cliffy, I stick 2 pieces of foam together and then hack at them with a knife. It's mostly random, but I'm trying to shave away bits, avoiding right angles, and I dig into the foam to create a bit of an overhang. I'm also trying to make some natural looking steps that could be scaled with a climb test. Weirdly, 6 months then passed between this shot and the next one, as we had to postpone the project for a little while, and now I'm picking it back up 4 weeks out from playing a game on it. I pressed foil into the foam to make it look more mountainous and rocky, and then move on to creating the small rocky outcrops that flank the road.
I'm trying to make it look as natural as possible, but my other big concern is making sure models can stand on it. So that, for example, is much too steep, so I'm going to have to shave that to get it to a more gradual incline or add some steps in. So I've got 5 rocky edges to go alongside of the road, and I've got my pencil, and I'm going to work out where the river, where Ravenhill are going to be, and work out where these rocks will end up being, because they could end up being something like this, for example, where the road would go like that, or they might want to be even closer together. I need to work it out. What I am thinking of doing though, according to my picture, Ravenhill was going to be in the middle here, and then the entrance to Dale was going to be here like the movie, and then a bridge where Bulb's army and the Eagles arrive over there. I think I'm going to shift everything up a little bit and have Ravenhill more in this back corner, and the reason for that is it's going to be tall and I don't want it to block the shot of the whole battlefield when we come to film this. So I'm going to have Ravenhill here, Icy River and a bridge there. The Icy River will continue in front of Ravenhill, and then this middle section is going to be the road. I haven't got anything square to use, but there'll be columns going up the side of the road, which actually means in terms of gameplay we want to spread these rocks out a little bit wider. So we've got Dane, these iron hills will come down the hill here, Dane's there, and then between these 2 columns is where the road will run, which is where Thorin's company will come on. The bulk of the battle will take place here, a little bit here, and then obviously over there will be a river and Ravenhill. I've put out the call because I'm a bit worried I'm not going to get it done. So what I'm going to focus on now is getting the shape of the river and Ravenhill out, so I know roughly where that's going to go. And then hopefully my friend Evie's going to pop down and she'll use foil and do all the monotonous stuff, like making it look like cliffs and undercoating it black and putting in polyfiller and stuff like that I can kind of delegate. So there's nothing stuck under here, but there is daylight. The board has warped. I really should have braced them, but the way I'm going to tackle that is to use my hot wire cutter to shave down to kind of level up where the boards meet, and then if that doesn't work, I'll build it back up with a hill. But I'm going to try and cut down into it, and it'll give it some of these natural undulations that I've been wanting anyway. So I'm going to cut down here, cut down over there, and then probably cut down these sides as well, although I'll leave this side until I've added the rocky texture to the river. And even the river section I've messed up because I've realised I've not textured it before I've stuck it down. Luckily I remembered before I stuck this big one down. But let's get cracking. So that now is flush. The board isn't touching the floor. There's still air under there, but what it is flush on top. And I'll be able to bridge over the little gap between them with grass and things like that. and then this will act as like a cliff. So that's actually quite good. Don't understand why, but for some reason this side of the foam, it's just melted away in a big hole underneath. That is like a massive crevice under there. So I'm gonna have to dress that up somehow, and I'm gonna ignore it for now. So I need to continue the road on from the bridge, up to a broken bridge, down to a glacier, back up to the remainder of the broken bridge, and then onto a tower, and the glacier itself needs to be higher. So the first thing I need to do is raise this whole section here. So I'm going to cut a piece of foam, just placeholder, plonk it on there, so I know what height I'm working with for steps and things like that. Because I think what I will have to do is kind of curve the bridge away, maybe more like an angle like that. And then it'll come round, otherwise I'm going to run out of space here, and Bolger and the Eagles and things don't need much of a hill. I like the height of it. I'm worried about how difficult it's going to be to get up there. It's going to need a lot of steps. But I'll try and make rocks that are climbable, and then also kind of more man-made type steps. I actually quite like this as a glacier effect. I might have stumbled on something quite good there. So this bit here looks like a glacier to me.
I quickly get some steps knocked out by carving them into offcuts of foam with the hope of flanking them with rocks later. I make sure to create a platform partway up to stand models on, and then carve a gap in the foam to wedge them in, and I'll fill that with polyfiller later.
Keep changing my mind on this, but I'm gonna raise this section up, and this will be the feet of the bridge, and also the next plane up so that the bridge can go over the top of the glacier, or would have gone over the top of the glacier, but obviously it's broken.
So Gondor has called for aid, and Evie has answered.
This is Evie. Hi, Evie. Evie's come as reinforcements for the board build, which, as you will have seen, is not going well, and we've got no time to finish. So Evie's going to come and do like the boring stuff that I don't want to do. So thanks for that one. Just so you can get to know Evie, I'm just going to do a little pop quiz. Have you seen Lord of the Rings before?
Nope.
Perfect, excellent. Do you know anything about like miniature wargaming?
Nope.
Perfect, good, excellent, right, cool. But it's fine because you're going to be good at like building terrain, which you're obviously an expert at, yeah?
Yeah.
Yep, perfect, yep. Great, excellent, yeah.
Cue a few genuinely successful days of building.
So you literally screw a piece of foam up, and what I would recommend is you make sure you've got one thin bit. Otherwise you can just do it in a big ball, and you're literally going to get the bit of foam that you want, and so like that looks like foam. Push it in, and like now it looks like a rock in that little bit. That is that whole process. Literally that is you for the next 9 hours work. And then like if you get like a little gap like that, it's not super essential, but that's where your little bit, so you turn it around, shove the little bit in, and then that will do it. And that is like this part of shit I don't want to do it, so that's why you're here.
Evie presses the foil into the foam to create the rocky texture for about an hour, while I add some offcuts of foam around the board that will become the natural hills and bumps on the battlefield. Evie then pivots to PVAing the road and sprinkles some uniform stones onto it, but we realise pretty quickly that we should be mixing the stones with an earth texture or placing them on top of other stones rather than straight onto the foam. So we abandon that for now and both move to smoothing polyfiller between the rocky offcuts and the base of the board. And then we create a blend of sand to cover the board with, sprinkling the uniform road stones on top of that.
Who's your favourite character in Lord of the Rings, Evie?
Gotham.
Gotham! That's where Batman lives, you know that, right?
What's it? Gollum.
Gollum. And may the force be with you too.
This texture is actually looking really good. You can see I've differentiated the road with the stones, but none of it is stuck down. Whilst I wait for more sand and basing materials to arrive, I pivot to Ravenhill. I'm not planning it thoroughly, I just start making elevated areas by chopping steps into a piece of foam and then create some dwarven style walls and archways to match the film. I cut a strip of foam approximately 3 inches tall and do the same to a piece of cereal box card. I hold up a model to the card as a reference and chop an angled dwarven archway shape into it. Now I can use this as a template to create multiple archways easily in the foam. I angle the sides and top of the arch and add some decoration with a pencil, copying a few dwarvish runes off Google. I squish the whole thing with foam and it's looking pretty good. I still don't have a clear idea of the overall structure, and I know I'll need a lot to create the sort of rat run that we see in the movies. Keeping it in the corner and the edge of the board will make it playable though, so I make a few more walls to see how it looks. Add a little more elevation and some flagstones inside Ravenhill, and then it's time for a sit rep.
We've got Dane arriving from his hill. The dwarves will come from here. This will be a road. You see slightly different stone type on the road. Frozen river will be there. That bridge won't be arched. And then there'll be another hill here, which is where Bolg and the eagles arrive from. Then you go up here. And then there's the glacier, so there'll be a broken bridge here. This is going to be an icy area where Azog and Thorin fight. And there's like a glacier there where Bolg and Legolas fight. And then up here will be Ravenhill. So this is where Philly and Killy die. And then up on top up here will be the signal tower, the flags, looking out over the battlefield. Lots to do.
I quickly stick down the rocks and make some more polyfiller undulations to the left side of the board, and then it's on to flocking.
Good. I'm going to hopefully PVA and sand it all now in this next session in the next hour. So what I've got my expensive sands that I bought, which was a mistake obviously, but I've got bigger rocks, thicker rocks, and then what I've got is some Child's Play sand. That was £3 from Sainsbury's, which is a bargain. I mean, that's going to last me forever. And I'm going to add it to the tub of the old mix, and hopefully get as close to the old mix as I can, spread it over the whole battlefield, and then I've still hopefully got enough more uniform rocks to sprinkle on the top that will be able to do the road. And then just going to spray it with PVA endlessly. So I'm going to paint PVA on it, put my rock mix all over it. I mean, this is not stuck down at all at the moment, but hopefully with layer and layer of PVA soaking through it for the next kind of 3 days, spraying it twice, 3 times a day, it'll eventually stick down, and then we can paint the whole thing black and then start to build up the paint, add static grass and add snow, and that's starting to feel like it's nearly finished, even though it looks nothing like it's finished. So the play sand is wet. I thought it'd be dry, don't know why, but you could probably make a sandcastle out of this, which is not what I'm after, although I am slightly impressed by that. Don't know how much impact that's going to have on the board. I'm probably going to go ahead with it anyway. I just need to get cracking at this point. You can see this doesn't look very natural, so what I'm doing is just taking sand like that. I've got to push it in with my finger, which is making it look smooth, which is not ideal. So then I sprinkle a little bit on top, and hopefully that looks okay. But obviously there's no glue on that, much like all of the rest of these top bits. I'm hoping extensive PVA spraying will resolve that issue and it'll just stick. We'll find out. What I need to do before I start spraying it is kind of reveal these cliffs where I've not actually put PVA. So for example, this is where Dane stands. So I'm just gonna brush all that off. Make that look a bit more natural. There we go.
Ignoring Ravenhill, that's looking like a pretty good 4x4 board now. Time to get it all locked in with some PVA.
So that's the ratio I've gone for. So you can see I filled it about to there with PVA and then topped it up with water. I'm doing it from quite far away because this first pass will move around the rocks and the sand quite a lot, and I don't want to do that if I can help it. I don't want it to end up shiny. I'm hoping I've not got too much PVA in there, but I think it'll be fine. Everything's rectifiable anyway. If it is shiny, I'll be able to paint over it more or something like that. It'll be fine. So all the modelling sand
is stuck really well. That's like really hard. Even these bits of road have stuck together, but as you can see here, like that bit of road is pulling off in like a chunk. Hopefully you can see that. So the stones are stuck together, but the actual play sand hasn't stuck. What I'm going to do is give it another big go over with the PVA, and then I'm going to leave it 2 full days and come back to it. And it's the middle of summer at the moment, so hopefully it'll dry. Although it is the middle of summer in the middle of England, so we'll see. Now we leave it to dry for 2 days and hope it works. That was a very PVA mix, so hopefully I'm not going to regret that. Whilst the sand is hopefully drying, I make a bridge for the river crossing near where Bolg enters. It's a dwarven bridge, so I style it to match the walls that I've made within Ravenhill. I'll also use the same style of bridge for the broken one above the glacier. It's as simple as carving the floor into a piece of foam, creating some edge panels with dwarven decoration, and raising the whole thing up so it stands above the river. And of course, pressing the whole thing with foil to make it look stony.
So it's dry, or very nearly dry. There's some clumps under here that aren't quite there yet.
So here's an example of it not quite being dry. I don't know if you can see that moving, but I'm going to go for it anyway, because I just need to get cracking.
What I'm going to do now is paint the whole thing completely black. Make sure I get in every nook and cranny, because then I'm going to spray it with brown paint, grey paint, whatever colours I decide. But if I spray it and I've not completely sealed it with the black, it's going to erode away the foam and I'll have just not a great board. It's going to look more like the moon than Erebor. So I'm just going to get my brush and brush off any loose stones.
It's quite a lot more sand's come off than I was anticipating. It's kind of dry and bare around there, but I'm still going to persevere. My hand is taking ages, so I decide to risk the melting and I spray it. I've just brought the board back in from outside having sprayed it. I was just about to take out the next board thinking that this one had gone okay, but actually it has warped a little bit from the spray paint, so I'm going to show you that now. It's kind of like melted and bubbled a bit, and some of these columns have gone a little bit as well. Now I can definitely get away with it, and I'm hoping it's not going to carry on and affect the rest of the board too much, but basically I'm not going to be lazy, and I'm actually going to paint the rest of that one rather than spray it. That was an idea that lasted about 5 seconds. You know what? Changed my mind. It's hardly noticeable. I'm just going to spray it and get cracking. With my badly placed camera, I dig the broken bridge into Ravenhill and make a start on Bolg's Hill using the same method as I did for the Iron Hills hill.
The spray is dried now. This is rock solid. There's no stones coming off this. There's not many stones coming off this when I rub it, and the only thing I've done is I painted around some areas of it with black with the acrylic paint. I've sprayed over it before they've dried, so I've got weird bubbles here.
It's almost like a film over the top. Oh, there you go, I just popped it. But there's quite a few little areas like that. So what I'm going to do, and like here you can see that this is where the sand wasn't stuck down, so I'm going to add some Vallejo earth texture, and hopefully that's going to build that back up to the more like the rest of the battlefield. That can then dry overnight, and then I can spray it all again with brown tomorrow. I paint the Vallejo earth texture on the more bare bits of ground, and then spray the whole thing with Colour Forge Hyrax Brown, which is the equivalent to Games Workshop's Dryad Bark.
Spray paints work really well, it's dried really quickly, and I'm going to get straight on with dry brushing a lighter brown on top of it, and then I'll do the grey. It's looking pretty good at the moment.
I think the looming deadline is getting to me, because what I do next is happily paint the whole board orange. If for some reason you're building along with me, skip this step. I use a bit of free time to create some more dwarven structures to expand Ravenhill, and then I show how to tell someone you regret painting the board orange without saying that you regret painting the board orange.
This has had like a dry brush of like a light brown on it, which in patches looks a bit shit, like here. Yeah. But it's okay because basically we're going to go over it with like a grey, and so the whole top layer, so all the thick bits will just get turned to grey, and it all will just most look grey and stony, and then anything at that point that still looks crap, we'll just put snow all over it and it'll be fine. So there's going to be snow and grass, like everywhere that looks a bit crap, snow and grass.
Then we actually crack on. Evie paints the rock faces grey while I create the rocky outcrops for the Ravenhill board and texture that. Then I move on to carving away at the glacier.
Okay, so I wasn't sure how to do the glacier, so what I've done is basically stuck the knife in and flicked out pieces of foam. I'm hoping when this top part, which should maybe be textured a bit, and that is painted kind of blue with a white dry brush, it's gonna look like a glacier. So Evie's just painted the rocks. These are looking good. There's obviously a few little bits like underneath that we've not got to, but the idea is that that's basically black anyway, so it's making its own shadow. I'm gonna leave that in the sun and then dry brush over it, which will take all of 5 minutes, and I think that's gonna really make it look good, in theory. Now, where did I spray the last board? Oh yeah. I'm just texturing this floor pattern in the fortress here. I've used a knife and then a pencil. This half is just a pencil, but when I push the texture in, the pattern disappears. Whereas over here, it stays. So what I need to do is go over this whole half again with the knife and then the pencil again and then put the texture in.
It's a simple enough job, it's just time consuming. For the actual ruins of Ravenhill, I start by filling any gaps with PVA and then undercoat them in black. And I don't risk the spray paint this time.
So this is the Ravenhill board at the moment. So the mud's completely locked in, that's not going anywhere. These flat bits I'll use the Vallejo earth texture on. I'm going to dry brush up that black so it's like a grey. This I have textured using the foam, using the foil, so that's going to hopefully look icy. The actual banner and the tower I need to make, but I'll worry about that later. So the next step is to spray this mud and then dry brush it. Dry brush this, spray these ruins that I've made, maybe dry brush them, and then paint the cliffs, and then at that point I can make the river.
Now this next time lapse is very satisfying. As I faff about in Ravenhill, dry brushing the floor, adding the ruins and painting the glacier, Evie dry brushes the rest of the board grey, picking out all of the stones. All of a sudden, it's looking like a battlefield, even if a large portion of the underside is orange.
Okay, so I'm going to wash the flagstones in this brown. It's Agrax Earthshade it's called. I don't know if you can see that because it's so bright. But hopefully that's going to add and kind of make it look a bit dirty instead of all kind of clean. So I'm spreading that thing, trying to get it to fall into the gaps, and then on the raised edges will stay white, and then all in between will be all grimy. And I'll do that in patches and not consistently. So this bit can be grimy and that'll be less, and then this will be black and that'll be brown, and it'll look hopefully natural and weathered. Okay, this is where we're at the moment. So nothing on the glacier, nothing on the river, but we think the dry brushing is pretty much complete. Columns obviously need paint on completely, river needs making, and then the fortress itself looks the same as the floor and the cliffs. So that's something he's doing about that, but we'll worry about that in a minute.
I can't emphasise how much I'm just guessing here for the glacier. I start by dry brushing it white and decide it lacks depth, so I mix water with some darker blues and wash the whole thing, before dry brushing it white again. It's not done, but while it dries, I pivot to the river. As with this whole video, I'm on a time scale and I'm winging it. I Google a few ways to make rivers, and lots of them involve resin and more stress and skill than I have time for. So I went full 1996 Blue Pea to Tracy's Island, and I scrunched up bits of toilet roll and squished them into clumps that look like waves. Whilst I'm doing that, my wife, who is actually good at arts and crafts, pops in and basically questions why I'm making an orange board, and then proceeds to help by painting over the whole thing with a grey-green. This river hasn't dried, but at this point I just need to get some paint on it, so I'm going to paint it green and blue. I'm deliberately not going to mix them properly so that the colours kind of stream into each other. I'm going to then get another load of PVA on top of that tomorrow morning, even though the underneath isn't dry, so that it'll dry shiny, and then the ice floats can go on top of it.
and then it's just bits of flooring and the ruins and the flag tower, snow, grass. We're not a million miles away. We can do this.
Even while the paint's still wet and with just a dark blue mixed with a little green down, the river is starting to look really good. Whilst the river dries, I decide Ravenhill needs a bit of a restructure. I cut a portion of an octagon to wedge open the cuboid tower I'd already built and then plan a whole new layout.
So I'm going to remake this bit so it drops off down to about here and looks a bit more natural. This will have an archway in it. There's going to be another layer here where I'll just put a few flags on, nothing massive. That'll stretch over here, which is going to be a complete wall, and obviously it'll crumble at the top. And I really need to get cracking, and I'll try and fill this gap with something.
I'm having to be as pragmatic as possible now. I dry brush white onto the crests of waves on the river, and while that's drying I add a darker blue to the shaded areas of the glacier. And then while that's drying, I PVA over the whole river to lock it in and give it a watery shine. And it's time for a little recap before the final stretch, so if you're looking down at your painting, the next 30 seconds are the ones to look up for.
So this is where the board's at. Grass arrived today, so this is where Dane will come on. So I'm going to grass it today, hopefully that'll dry overnight, and snow it. I need to paint these columns. River's looking good. That white stuff is predominantly PVA that's drying, but I've got perspex here to rough up to turn into ice floats. This is where Bolg and the Eagles will arrive from, and then we've got Ravenhill. I need to paint this texture, and obviously these aren't stuck on. That'll need painting as well. And this is where Thorin and Azog have their fight. I'm going to need to do a layer of PVA on that to make it more shiny. And this is Ravenhill, and then at the top up here again all that comes off and just needs painting. I need to make some flags that'll go up here to look out over the battlefield, but in theory it'll all be okay.
The remaking of Ravenhill has left me with quite a lot of spare offcuts of ruin. I paint the exposed sides of these to use them as fallen rubble on the ground, and finally paint the columns next to the road with the same colour. I add a bit of weathering to the structures of Ravenhill, more to differentiate it from the floor than anything. I wash it with greens and browns and then dry brush some dirt near the bottom of it around the windows using darkish browns while watching a wonderful episode of Hot Ones that should be out of shot. Thanks, Dave.
We come now to the part of the build where there's no going back. Time to flock. Never used these before, but I've got AK grass flock. I've got late fall and dry grass, so I've kind of got greeny yellow and pure yellow, and I'm going to mix them in here. And then I'm going to use my static grass applicator to hopefully make the grass stand up. Normally you put the bases on top of the metal tray, clip that to it, turn that on, and then the electric current will make the grass stand up on the bases. It's great. Obviously I can't put the metal tray under the board, but I'm hoping if I move it round near where I'm using the applicator, the static will still work and the grass will still stand up. I can't work out, if I attach that to that and then I touch that, I'm pretty sure I'm going to get electric shock. If I turn it off and then move it, and then turn it on again after I finish touching it, I don't think I'll get electric shock. So that's what I'm going to try, and it could be really good YouTube content, but I'm not deliberately electric shocking myself for YouTube.
So that white stuff there is the glue, so it's going to be very patchy grass. I don't know if I've done it too thick. If you imagine that across the whole battlefield, it's going to be way too much grass. So I'm going to get more and more sporadic, but we're going to see how well it applies on there and if it sticks up. So that's pretty short grass, but what it has done, I think, is stick up quite well.
I apply the grass in patches. If I cover too much, it's going to look like a grassy battlefield, and it's not. The grass is there to add depth and variety, and primarily to hide mistakes. If you were to describe the board, it should still be snowy and muddy, not grassy.
So I've run out of flock. It's a little more sparse than maybe I would have done it. I would have had a little bit under here. I've not done it too close to the edges because I didn't want to get it into the water, which is obviously still drying. I've not done any on Ravenhill, but I've got some little clump flocks that I can pop down there. Very excited to see how it looks in the morning. I think I'm going to hoover it to get the bits that aren't unglue off. Or if it looks good, what I'll do is just PVA spray the whole thing and it'll lock it all in place, whether it's got glue or not underneath it.
I've added a load of PVA to the glacier. I'm hoping that's going to dry clear and shiny, because we do want that top bit to be very shiny.
This looks really good. I'm actually really happy with the amount of grass on it. There's a few bare areas next to the road here and over there, which I kind of knew would happen, but I've run out of flock now. What I'll do is put more snow in those areas where it butts up to the cliff anyway, and in your brain I think it will say that there's grass under there and that's going to be fine. It's more grassy than planned, but that's because I've not hoovered it off yet. If I hoover it, it's going to come up more patchy and have less grass overall, but I actually really like where it is at the moment. So I think what I'm going to do is varnish the whole thing and see if that sticks the grass down, and then spray it with PVA a few times. But what I'm going to do first is get a little piece of foam and spray it with the Colour Forge matte varnish, which I just got from Boys down the road, and make sure it doesn't dissolve it. Even if it does, I might do it anyway, because this is so covered in paint and protected now that I don't think it's going to be an issue. But we'll do this first just to be safe. There's quite a lot on there, so we'll see what happens to that.
Well, thank God I didn't spray that all over the board, because that foam has very much eroded. So I'm going to go with the classic PVA job. So it's finally time to start adding snow to the main board, and immediately it's transformed. I don't have loads, so I do a first pass on the main battlefield, but I'm running low, so I move to a first pass on Ravenhill, and it doesn't get me too far. I don't know why I thought 2 small pots would do a whole 6x4 board. Ran out of snow, ordered some on Amazon Prime, so that's going to go on the morning of leaving, but need snow up there and need snow down here, so I'm moving on to the ice floats, which look pretty cool. I've put snow on this one. I think I'm going to go no snow. I think they look better without, but obviously I need to make the rest of the rivers worth. I'm cutting the perspex, but it's all pinging up on my eyes, so borrowing my wife's sunglasses. So I smash up some more perspex, sand it down to make it less transparent, paint the edges with Pilar Glacier contrast paint, and then dry brush the whole thing with white. Done. I actually use the same method to make some icicles out of the prongs of forks as well. Something I did on the first ever 2 Trees video. Shout out in the comments if you remember that one. The top for the super glue is stuck in the super glue bottle. So that is a small pile of super glue. I've fallen at the last hurdle here. I'm going to dip my icicles into it. This is going to be a 200. Shove that in there. And we have an icicle. Rinse and repeat. So I'm up in the hobby room because I forgot one key thing. Kind of important. Azog signal tower. I need to make flags and banners and a horn. It's Thursday evening now, and I leave Saturday morning like 8 AM. So things can be drying overnight from the Friday, but I've got one day to finish off the board and build this signal tower and all kinds of stuff. It's also carnage in here, so I'm going to be working on the floor. That area that you can't see is just covered in eagles and trolls and bats and things that need basing and snowing. So prepare for the quickest signal tower of all time. But what I have done is text Louis and ask if I can convert his Witch King into a signal tower. I'm just going to show you. Louis made a dismount for his Morgul Knight Throne of Skulls army, which I'm photographing, and the dismount was meant to be casting a black dart, but instead this is what came out. Looks cool, but we like to make fun of him because we don't know what it is.
What it is the perfect shape for Azog's signal tower trumpet. So I'm hoping he's going to say, yeah, chop it off, I'll stick some legs on it and that'll be the trumpet done. And then I've got some doweling and things on the floor here to make the other 3 banners. It's just going to be a couple of pieces of dowel and a piece of paper for the actual banner, and I'm just as quick as we possibly can. It's just about speed now. I'm sorry if that ruins the video, hopefully it won't.
So I'm really tight on time now. I'm counting in hours and minutes instead of days. And so without planning, I Google a quick picture of it and I copy it, eyeballing the size. I smush together some dowel and bolster and make this in less than 10 minutes, but it's way too big. So it's another 10 minutes on the hobby floor, making exactly the same thing again, but smaller. The flag is made from dishcloth. I used wood glue to stick it to the wood, but I haven't coated it in PVA or anything. I'm hoping there's enough contact points of wood glue along with some regular paint to make it fairly rigid.
So this one looks good. These are way too big, and the simplest way is just cut them down, I think. It's also off center, so I'm going to cut that down there.
I cover them in red paint and it's back to the main board while they dry. The end is in sight.
This is it. In 24 hours I'll be playing on that in Edinburgh. I just need to add a little bit of snow and things around here. We ran out last time we were doing it. I've got some icicles and... if you turn the camera. Icicles and ice floats and things ready to go on. But actually going to make it, I think. Models, not so certain about.
So this is it then, the final stretch. It's more snow on Raven Hill, a lot more. More ice floats and more icicles, which really do add a lot of character. I think the best way to show it off is with this little video that I sent to Aaron, Louis and Leo.
Okay, so the board is done. So the Iron Hills dwarfs come down here. Dane stands at the top of this rock. The elves turn to face them. Some Gundabad arrive from over there and charge down here. Everybody falls back until down the road comes Thorin. They'll have a big fight in the middle. And then Legolas ninjas it over some ice and stuff and up into the tower where they take the goats into Ravenhill. Philly and Killy scat out first into here. And then Philly's killed and is thrown, I guess, through that tiny window. Maybe I need a ladder there. Or from here. Thorin's like, oh no, why'd you do that? And then they have a big fight on the ice. And then the Eagles and Bolg's army will turn up from here. More fighting there. That's the board. And then this is, I guess, is the shot that we'll have of the table as we play. Signal tower will go up here. That's being made at the moment. I've done icicles in places that look quite cool, but I didn't make many and I've run out of super glue now, so I'm taking that as a sign. But I could do more icicles. I've got enough to make about 100 more. There's only about 12 on there. And these aren't stuck down, but I think that kind of works. And I would have packed the snow out a bit more and then covered it in the snow stuff because it's quite an expensive way to make that thick. But really, I'd like that to have been packed and down, but it's fine. So it's snowy. Hopefully you can see the sun is coming in from that way. So you've got snow on this side of the rocks, but not on this side of the rocks. That's the plan. If we get this right, could be a good video. Maybe this is the angle.
I said it was done, it's not. Just got to finish the signal tower before finally getting up to Edinburgh and seeing it with some models on it. So you remember Louis' Nazgul? Well, I have his blessing to chop off the black dart and turn it into a war horn. Some snippers, a little bit of bronze paint and a wooden stand later, and it is done. Time for the long road north.
Got to get this 6x4 board into there. I'm sure that is possible somehow. Just left, going on a 5-hour drive with the board.
and it's already wobbling, and I've been driving for 30 seconds. Don't know if you can see that. That is not ideal. Not much I can do about it. I'll try and stuff a jumper underneath it maybe, but this is not all getting there in one piece. Scotland! Yay!
We made it to Scotland and it didn't break. I'm really happy with how it's looking. This is it with all the models on it that are going to participate in the battle. It's looking really good. I like the amount of snow that we got on it. The grass and muddy texture's got the nice blend. The river looks really good with the icicles. And then there's just enough space to actually play a bit of a mini battle in Ravenhill. So we've got 98 Gundabad warriors with 7 captains, 4 Gundabad trolls. There's a couple of ogres coming on at the back with the troll brute. We've obviously got the white wag, we want to know what happens to him. There's some hunter orcs climbing up the cliffs on this side and then all the way down to the icy river. There's a few more hunter orcs and fell wags here. But what are they up against? We've got 30 iron hills, a mix of mattocks, crossbows and spears with Dane. We've got 24 Mirkwood elves with Thranduil, and we've got the Lake Town contingent that are going to be making a break for Dale. Obviously arriving a little later, we've got Thorin's company. And then we have to include the chariot. I'm looking forward to seeing what that does to 98 Gundabad. But that's not the only thing that's arriving, because as you probably noticed in the shot, we've got Bolg's army arriving, and behind it we've got 12 eagles, Radagast on an eagle, and Grahir with Beorn. We've got 24 goblin mercenaries, no more than 100, no problem for Dorlan. And then Azog and his signal tower. Cannot wait to share this one with you. It's going to be incredible. Aaron, Louis and Leon are arriving imminently, and it's 9 in the morning now. I don't anticipate we'll be finished until about 11 PM. Can't wait to share it with you. Thanks for watching. Thank you so much to our patrons. You guys are the best. It really, really means a lot to us, and it really is leveling up the channel. The money is just going straight back in to making more and more and better content. Thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Please like, please subscribe, and please share it places, because I drop it in about 5 Facebook groups and that's it. And I'm sure there's more other places I should be sharing it. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for watching.